Okay, I think let's begin the panel discussion. This is going to be a very interesting session post-lunch. We'll try our best to keep you awake, as I said. And in fact, you got to listen very intently to all the panelists and their opinions because there's going to be a test. So after every speaker completes what he has to say in terms of his opinion, I'm going to pick one of you guys and I'm going to ask you what did he say. I'm joking. Okay. So let's go ahead with the panel discussions. Now, this is a very interesting topic. I know for the last quite a few years, we've been making our endeavors in terms of indulging CEOs, business heads, stakeholders, or chairmen of the companies into this initiative. And with one primary objective, that they treat this initiative as their primary source of driving continuous improvements in the organization. A lot of companies have been able to successfully do it. Some of the companies are in the process of getting to that level. A lot of companies in India still are at the implementation level at a very operational stage. So most of the companies start at an operational level to deploy Lean and Six Sigma because that's the easiest. So you go into a process and improve it. But as you saw in some of the presentations, and you would have seen them in the past, and I have one typical telecom example which I wanted to share with you. So I was actually mentoring a project in this telecom company, and I found out that 70% of their projects were talking about cycle time reduction. And a good percentage of those 70% were actually around bill order entry time or order entry time or things like that, very transactional processes. Reducing cycle times from 45 minutes, 50 minutes or an hour to 30 minutes. So we are talking of reduction in terms of 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes or so. So I asked the stakeholders, what's the total lead time to deliver a connection like that? And he said 30 days. So I said, if you're going to reduce 15 minutes, 30 minutes out of 30 days, how much of impact are you going to really drive to the stakeholders or to the customers or to the business? So that's the big question. And that's where you might add up all those operational projects and say, I have done 10 crores of savings, and you take that to the CEO or the business head and says, I can't see those 10 crores. Can I relate them into the P&L of the organization, but I can't see where it is impacting my P&L. So if you say that you've got 10 crores of savings, my profitability should have enhanced by 10 crores. And we're not able to prove it. Because when you do implementation at an operational level, while some of the things improve, there are other things which deteriorate. So the balance is very small, right? Therefore, I think this is a very apt panel to actually initiate this kind of discussion, where we understand from the heads of the businesses, this elite group of panelists, in terms of them, how do they see the deployment of Lean and Six Sigma really helping their strategic objectives? Have them make a good strategy or have them deploy a very important strategy inside the organization, where they can very clearly see the benefits. And they don't have to search for those benefits which we claim. Right? So I think, let me introduce the panel to you. We have Mr. Uttam Bose with us. And Mr. Uttam Bose is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer for Hindustan Motors Limited. He has got about 27 years of experience. He's also worked with Moser Baer. We are very fortunate to have him here as one of our elite panelists. We were to have Mr. Dotashmal. Unfortunately, he's called in sick, so he's not been able to join us. We have Mr. Bill Remy. We heard him talk about the new product development strategy a while ago. Those thoughts were really, really provoking and very, very beneficial and value-adding. We have Mr. N.C. Narayan. We saw him talking again about new product introduction strategy. And then we have Dr. Amit Kapoor, the Honorary Chairman for Institute of Competitiveness. And he's a great thinker and has guided a number of organizations towards driving competitiveness within their businesses. So without much ado, let me start with the first thought-provoking question to the panelists. And would actually, after the panelists have shared their opinion, I would even throw the stage open to the audience to share their opinions or actually put a question across to the panelists. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is do they think in their companies Lean Six Sigma is the number one continuous improvement strategy? And if no, what are their views of making it the number one continuous improvement strategy? Because we see a plethora of initiatives, methodologies, TPM, TOC, Lean, Six Sigma, everything happening under one umbrella or under different umbrellas or independently. But how do they see an integration of these initiatives, or do they see these initiatives as the primary driver of all improvements within their organization? So let me start with Mr. Srivastav.
some discussions regarding this subject matter did take place prior to lunch, and you also, Kulbhushan, touched on this subject during your presentation. What we must bring to the forefront of what we are discussing is how to bring the Lean Six Sigma initiatives from the operational level to the boardroom, and how to create the leadership alignment. On this, I have three important things to bring about. Is at operational level, what all of us try, various project and excellent tools used for efficiency and productivity improvements. But we are not able to influence the effectiveness. So, typically, in case we were to look into efficiency, productivity and effectiveness, effectiveness only will come in case in the boardroom the leaders were aligned with what our company's objectives are at the time of setting the balance scorecard or objectives for the various departments and what needs to be done. Because at the project level, what needs to be done will mostly be limited to improvement of efficiency or productivity, which may be cost, speed, quality, anything and everything, but it will be mostly be productivity or efficiency, not effectiveness. The other thing I wanted to bring about was, at the time of setting the balance scorecard, which process particularly should start from the boardroom itself, when the top level, the leadership group balance scorecard only is deployed and percolates down the line. In that, the various customers' internal, financial and learning and growth index that Gary Hamel suggested, and later on it was built into as the fourth perspective. Are we able to drive all that through the performance management plan in the organization? So, the moment the boardroom is aligned to the effective deployment of its objectives down the line, driving it through measurements, knowing fully well that the measurements drive behaviors in the organization, work culture, and through performance management plan, and expect built into that new things that they are going to do, and we should not keep doing what we have been doing and expect better results.
Thank you.
Some very interesting things that Mr. Srivastava had said. I would like to build on that. In fact, I think there has always been a very overemphasis on the idea of Lean Six Sigma and all that stuff. I think we actually end up missing a point that can we actually use manufacturing as a basis for competitive advantage? If we are not using manufacturing as a basis for competitive advantage, why the hell we are even talking about Lean Six Sigma? It is just one of those minor improvements which is not really going to give you some significant productivity gains. The world today, if I really talk about, say, some sets of enterprises, and I would like to talk about Hindustan Motors here. So if you talk about Hindustan Motors, by any stretch of imagination, Hindustan Motors does not need Lean Six Sigma right now. What they need is product innovation and process innovation, because that is where they would actually be successful. If we actually get focused too much on that, we actually just start missing the boat. We just start missing the ideas as to what is going to drive the market. In fact, secondly, if you really talk about Gary Hamel per se, when Gary Hamel talked about Lean Six Sigma, benchmarking, and so on and so forth, he said it is like sucking the blood out of stone. It is one of the most archaic views of the world. So the right view to the world is build business models which are different, build perspectives which are different. If I talk about the pharmaceutical industry, how do I actually look at creating competitiveness for the pharmaceutical industry? It's going to be, can I actually ramp up production from what we call as, say, the drug discovery process to ramping up production? That's going to be the key. It's not going to be anything else. In fact, at this point, in a country where we are actually facing a crisis on manufacturing, we should actually talk about manufacturing competitiveness and seeing how we could actually build productivity or how we could actually create value, rather than simply saying Lean Six Sigma. From my point of view, I think it is an archaic thing which happened in Japan and we are over-celebrating it. Let's build a concept or an idea which is for India, rather than celebrating things of the past.
I think the question was to see whether we are implementing Lean Six Sigma in our company. I can't directly answer that because I'm facilitating many organizations to deploy Lean Six Sigma. So I can probably reflect the perspective of the CEOs whom I regularly meet. What's currently happening is the business pressures are mounting because of the rapid globalization. And the CEO's agenda is obviously, since morning we have been discussing how to improve profitability, how to stay in the business and so on. Hardly I find they are keenly interested to know what is Lean is all about and Six Sigma is all about. The only interest they have is how this can be used as a vehicle or a conduit for getting their business objectives fulfilled. As rightly you presented the case study as well. So there's a business agenda which is converted into an application. So the growing emphasis on the tool, which very few people understand in detail. We also deliberated today that excessive application of statistical tool, is it favorable or unfavorable and so on. So there is a general feeling that these tools are taking too long a time to solve the problem. And people are more keen on applying the tools rather than fixing the business problem. So the major shift that the CEOs are looking for is which tool you are using is immaterial, but as long as the business issues are fixed. So that's what is happening in my opinion.
Thank you.
So when we think about is it the primary improvement methodology? I think that's true. I mean, I get to go all over the globe, and what I see is companies use some form of continuous improvement, Lean, Six Sigma, Lean Sigma. They call it many things. The challenge is, what do they use it for, right? Lots of people say they do it, and what do they do it for? Some people do it, say, well, it's all about cost, and they focus purely at cost takeout, which for sure is a byproduct. It can help, but that isn't what this was intended for. If you look at the foundations of either methodology, combined method, the idea is start with the customer and drive value. Drive growth and drive value. Very few people practice that very well. Very few people start with Hoshin like they should, deploy it through the business to the level, to the point where we can measure individual performance and group performance to the Hoshin plans, and then use CI to learn how to fill the gaps and drive execution performance. That is rare, but everybody says they do it. But what you find in practice, very few do it well.
Thank you.
Coming to your question, can this be made as a top priority for the chief executives to drive the business? The answer is absolutely yes. There's no second doubt in our mind. But somehow it loses its importance. I would differ with Mr. Kapoor's statement that for HM it should be only the innovation and the product development. Some of you might be seeing it is in the buzz now in the media that we have seen in last quarter around 100% growth as far as Ambi is concerned. Now, as well as the other part, the niche product, Mitsubishi itself is gaining market and doing better. Yes, innovations and product developments are needed, but to leverage upon your strength, which is the brand loyalty and which is the quality issues. I will give you a candid example. Our use of Lean and Six Sigma, which we used in our operations, especially in Uttar Para for Ambi. When we went out to the market, captured the voice of customer, there were buyers out there. But the issue was the quality irritants. Simple quality irritants compared to other vehicles in the market. We took up this Six Sigma process in our manufacturing facility, and we came out with a lot of problem solving and solutions, by which we improved upon the quality, and today the Ambi is selling again. There was an article again in Hindustan Times yesterday that Ambi strikes back. So these are the basic needs I would try to say. But coming back to the point again, do we take it to the boardroom? Absolutely yes, because any strategic move, the business is, after all, is done for profits. And when we are in boardroom preparing the strategy, we are supposed to solve the problems. Every company has problems. But Six Sigma, being a tool, compels us to solve the problem and come out in the market with the solutions. So that is where Six Sigma has to be a part of the boardroom. And as a strategy also, the lean part, jokes apart, we were at a point of time 12 directors in the boardroom of Hindustan Motors. Now we are 6. So I think it is lean now.
Thank you, Uttam. That's a good one. I think some of the points came out very clearly, that there is a lot of inclination from the boardroom, from the leaders of the organizations to actually use Lean Six Sigma as their primary driver for continuous improvement. Having said that, there's actually a sequel to the same question, after which I'll throw the stage open to the question from audience. The sequel is that now, if the need is clearly stated, if the need is clearly understood to position this initiative as at the boardroom level, a lot of people sitting in these organizations who are trying to deploy or who are deploying Lean Six Sigma in their organization are still at the operational level. And there's nothing wrong with that, because in my view, you start with where there is availability of data and you want to prove the power of Lean and Six Sigma. And that's probably the first place to start off with. Nothing wrong with that. But over a period of time, you have to graduate to the next tactical level and then to a strategic level too. Right? So the next question that I'm going to throw across to the panelists is, what in their view, we can take the deployment of Lean Six Sigma from an operational level to a strategic level? What will make it happen in their view?
The quality professionals, Six Sigma professionals, must project to the board this initiative as not a flavor of the day, but an effort to change the work culture. And they must be able to show value to the boardroom, what value they can bring to the company. And these two things, in my opinion, will be influential in changing the thought culture of the boardroom.
Very simply put, if we really want to say that, or if we combine this whole idea to the idea of customer service, if I see that there is a certain sets of returns of products or whatever, that is a severe issue, and that actually reduces the happiness of the customer, or it actually reduces the lifetime value for the customer. If I'm able to attach it to what I'm delivering to the customer, then it actually works well. And then it actually has a huge orientation in front of the consumer as to what the enterprise is doing, and then it actually takes a huge strategic measure. And that's where it can actually be a differentiation for your product as well. If we are not doing it, then it actually just gets relegated as a fairly simple operational tool. And that is what is really happening right now. We need to attach it to the marketing idea, the consumer idea, the happiness idea, and the value idea.
Sure, thank you.
For a moment, I would like to not to use the Lean Six Sigma. It is the continuous improvement. Is it a boardroom agenda? Because Lean and Six Sigma is going to be one of the tools that you may probably employ. Whether the CEO is keenly interested to institutionalize continuous improvement practices in the company or not. So, organizationally, if you see, none of the organization structure, the performance management system, job responsibility, etc., they don't cover continuous improvement as a responsibility. You have a boardroom strategy formulated at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, I happen to sit through some of the strategy facilitation. People ask the question, last year we came for the strategy planning and we are coming back and saying the same thing again. But why none of them have been implemented? You find the worldwide only 35% of the companies really thinking strategically. Out of that, 1/3 of them only really think about converting them into a real implementation plan. And 1/3 of that really finally find the end of the day. So it is something is a general issue for any CEO that he wants to translate his strategy into projects, and then ultimately at the end of the day organization improves. So somebody has defined stupidity is nothing but following the old process and expecting a new result. So obviously CEO is in his position purely because he is able to think ahead. That is why he is there. So it's not right to say that the CEO doesn't have a perspective to have continuous improvement as part of his agenda. It is there, but the problem is the current structure and systems don't permit it to become a reality.
Thank you.
I would reinforce what you said, absolutely. If CEOs think of any kind of operational improvement and tactically start in operations, they've probably missed the key concept. From a strategic perspective, the companies that do it well, the ones that we see execute, are the ones that start with what are the critical few things we're trying to drive from our performance in terms of revenue growth, earnings growth, customer-facing objectives, and then how do I break those down and cascade them into the business to drive performance, right? And you leverage the methodologies to then strategically deploy the projects in the right areas. Of course, you usually end up in operations somewhere because that's where most of your resources are. But the fact that you start there as a tactical initiative, you probably missed the key question.
Right.
Answering your question, I have a slight difference of opinion. You said that how to take this continuous improvement from the operational level to the boardroom level or to the CEO level. It's more of a top-down approach to me, because I have already experienced in my career where at the operational level these continuous improvement activities, change initiatives were taken very seriously. But it never went up to the CEO level. The steering committee did not have the CEO. So it was stopping at a middle level. And believe you me, it died its own death. All this change initiative and all these processes need a motivation from the top. And whatever strategies we build up in the boardroom or at the top level, culling out the key levers, they are absolutely rightly said by Mr. Narayan and Bill, that they have to be executed. Now, this is where the connection is needed at this point of time. So, my feeling is that if the top level is involved in these change initiatives, it is sustained. If it is not, then it is not sustained. So it is very important and imperative that it has to be top driven and it has to be a part of the boardroom. There is no way out. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some very interesting points here and quite diverse opinions from people, though all talking about the importance of these initiatives being top driven. So I take that very well, Uttam, when you say that it has to be a top driven. There are no two thoughts about it. It starts right from the top, and I think Jack Welch and other leaders, Larry Bossidy, everyone actually really set an example for all the other leaders to actually use this Lean Six Sigma as a top-driven initiative. Only then it will see the light of success. I also like the point where it was pointed out that by Mr. Srivastava that if it is not woven around the work culture, involvement and engagement of people, probably it may not sustain as a big initiative or as a strategic initiative. The value enhancement is extremely key. So every year you are under a constant stress to actually enhance the value of your own initiatives. So when you have to enhance the value of the business, you also need to enhance the value of your own initiatives. And that's what will take you to the next higher level of implementation. And it's not just about which tools, whether you use Lean, Six Sigma or anything. We heard a couple of gentlemen pointing out that CEOs are most interested in results. And yes, they are. They have a very short span of attention. So in 10 minutes, if you are able to tell them the whole story, they are good. So for example, even I showed you certain simulation techniques, but when I take this presentation to the chairman, I show only one slide. It's an A3. So I just show him, this was the problem, this was the earlier baseline for CAPEX, OPEX, and now this is this is the new improved CAPEX and OPEX. He is not interested whether you are using Lean, Six Sigma, simulation, anything like that. Yeah, people below him may be interested. People at the operation level, somebody who's running the supply chain, somebody who's running sales and marketing, he's very interested because he's going to use it time and again. At that level, they are interested in results. So I think very good points that came out here. I would throw the stage open to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I think somebody from here will carry a mic. Yeah.
January, quality being controlled by ASQ. The agenda was why quality should be in CEO's agenda. Now, what you say, CEO company inevitably, it's not okay. I think people can hear. It's okay. Wow. So, CEOs invariably, they talk top line and bottom line. They got AGM meeting, have a cup of tea, biscuits, everything fine. I'm also working in a MNC company, I know pretty well. Now, that was an eye-opener. The quality should be CEO's agenda. In reality, it is not there in 99%, as Narayan says. 35% globally practice this, and 1/3, like that, narrowed down. I don't think even Mr. Ratan can say, because he has more experience. 99% of the CEOs, so-called CEOs, okay, by definition, they really don't emphasize on quality, basically. Six Sigma and all, very far away from them. Fine.
Okay.
Honestly admit. Now, what you said, yes, the sales figure, they will see top line sales, expenditure, bottom line net, whatever it is. That's what they do. They practice even in India now. It's a very sorry state of affairs.
Okay, so if I reframe the question is that at the CEO level, they are only caring about the results. If they're not caring about the means of these results, what do you think is the reality at your level within your organizations? Do you care about what methodologies are being adopted? What is the means to the end that is being adopted? Is it because I think surely sustainability would be very key in your mind, because I get this question raised every time that the improvements you're doing, are they sustainable or not? So if I tell them that I am applying a methodology, they are actually they are having a confidence in us that yes, then the sustainability would be there. But let me hear from all of you.
This harsh statement of yours may be your presumption. I cannot give you data that how much out of the total CEOs, how much they are focused towards quality. But in today's world, in most of the board meetings, I am also a board member in certain other companies, but I do see that the objectivity is coming in. In the board meetings, the key levers, strategically the key levers are being discussed, and more emphasis is on the processes rather than the result. I see the board members now not running after figures, rather looking into the process, reviewing the action plans. As I told you that earlier, maybe 10 years back, when I was in a board, then it was more of subjectivity. People used to talk about the business for 5 minutes, and 15 minutes they used to talk about the economy. What Mr. P. Chidambaram is doing, what Mr. Rahul Gandhi is doing. So these were the part of the board meeting, in majority. But nowadays I see the difference. I see the difference very objectively. The key levers are being talked about, and more emphasis on the processes are being given rather than the numbers. It is being understood now that if we follow the process, if we review the process, the action plans, if we concentrate in verbs rather than noun, then the numbers will automatically come. So I think now the world is changing.
I support the view of Mr. Bose. It's not fair to say that the CEO is not committed to quality, because that's an unfair statement. Of course, it all depends on what kind of a competitive environment the company is operating. If you take India, for example, since prior to 20 years back, of course, we lived with what kind of a products and services all of us know. If you are operating on an environment where there is no competition, obviously many things are not going to be part of your agenda. Yeah, the business runs and the results are nothing to do with the planned way the CEO has directed the company. So obviously the tendency of human being is everything going well. Probably you think that because of your efforts it's happening. So now it is not the case. Even if you take stock exchange, in India there was only one stock exchange, now there are 3 stock exchanges are there. So there is no business is going to be devoid of any competition. Going forward, every business is going to have competition. Obviously, as the competition is mounting up, the CEO agenda will be obviously the customer centricity, then customer service and defect-free operations and so on.
I think very well put. So what I'm getting to hear from the leaders themselves is that the CEOs do not just care about the end, they also care about the means, which is, I think, a very good sign for us to go ahead and forge even much stronger, in a much stronger way, our initiatives. Share with them the value proposition. Yeah, why don't you go ahead with your question?
I'm just trying to respond to the discussion actually which is being said. I just thought sharing one new concept actually, which was shared in the CEO review within HUL this time. They said basically there is a concept of a good profit and a bad profit. And they say basically we are not interested in the bad profit, and how they explained in that anything to do with reducing consumer value, we should not be aiming for. So we are in a business of delighting consumer. That is part of our vision statement, and we should imbibe that by that. And so anything which enhances consumer promise, consumer value, and which gives more profit to the business, that's the good profit, and we should go for that. And anything which cuts consumer value and makes money for the business by cutting consumer value, then in that case it's a bad profit, and we should not be aiming for that. So that's one concept which was, and it was said by CEO, and I can tell you basically it's very, very regularly practiced the way basically it is being done within the business also. So
wonderful. Is there one? I can take one more question. Yes, please.
I'm Dr. Ishwar, faculty. See, the customer is looking at value. That is satisfaction by price, not cost. And MRP fixes the price. Now, manufacturer is looking at input minus waste is output. Now, business is looking at price minus cost is profit. So automatically, you're looking at, if you have to increase the profit, you have to reduce the cost. That means you have to reduce the waste. Now, major problem in the present day world is your time compression, the speed with which you have to achieve the result. Product life cycle is reducing. On the other side, what we have forgotten, Japan, what it is today, is by controlling the material, because 40% in garments to 85% in leather is only cost of material. If you go to petroleum product, it goes 90 to 95%. Where the profit is hidden and only in the knowing the material. That's why inventory control, just in time, all have come. Through the Japanese concept is only looking at the material cost. Now, how far we are able to achieve that? The supply chain itself has become value chain. Now, how are you going to achieve it at your level is my question.
So, can you repeat your last statement that you made? How are you going to?
How are you going to achieve this dichotomic requirement between the three? Because the change management very clearly says, if you want a strategy, it depends on three things. One, structure. Second is system. Third is people. Today in this country, we have 1.2 billion people. I would like to know how many leaders are available to drive this growth.
I think that's a very good question, and you can expect a tough question to come from a professor. You know? So, there is one thing which comes to my mind before I throw it to the panel for their opinion around it. I used to buy toothbrushes which were like 50 paisa, 25 paisa, or 1 rupee, 2 rupees, and then we saw those toothbrushes with vibrating bristles and everything, which cost 500, 600 rupees, or maybe 1,000 rupees. Also, my son wants a Spider-Man where he can play with the toy which is behind the toothbrush, and the toothbrush also rotates, spins, does everything. So he doesn't have to move his hands too much. He's become too lazy, right? And look at the cost. From a 5 cent, 10 cent toothbrush, it has become $10, $20, $50 toothbrush, right? So probably somebody is not just thinking about reducing cost, somebody is thinking about the value proposition. They have understood a market segment which will appreciate that value and will still buy a $50 toothbrush also. So as pointed out by Mr. Narayan and Bill and some of the other elite speakers here, innovation is going to drive us away from cost and help us focus on the revenues. So maybe there's a huge opportunity for each of these companies to actually look at the price factors, look at the value, and if they enhance that value, you can always increase the price of your product and claim a premium. And because there is to an extent that you can reduce cost. And beyond that extent, you will have to actually work on revenue. I'm sorry, I'll come to you in a while from now. Let me just take the opinion of the panel, and I'll come to you just after that.
So I think, I mean, your question is a good one, but I think what's changed over time is the markets that you're in, right? The prices in many markets are largely determined by the market and the competitors. And so price tends to be set by the market, and now you have to figure out how to compete in that market, which it can be about cost. Or, to your point, you can find where's the white space, where's the place where somebody is not serving a customer. Where is value? Where is innovation? And now I can move to that place, and now I get to set the price, right? That's where you're going to drive value. That's where you can drive margin. If you're going to play in a very competitive, commodity, crowded space, you are going to be very cost-driven. And if that's your only competitive weapon is cost, it is going to be a very short product cycle.
Thank you.
Doctor, I think you asked many questions in your statement. I'll at least attempt to answer a couple of them. One is that historically, if you find the problem solving as such, human beings have suddenly jumped in and said, if I solve problem, my quality will improve. And that obsession is what is haunting the PDCA to 7 steps of problem solving, 7 tools of QC, now Six Sigma and Lean and so on. But there is another dimension to it. In the last conference, we were deliberating on between innovation and Six Sigma, which will ultimately win. But there is no competition between innovation and Six Sigma, because Six Sigma is trying to solve the problem. By solving the problem, we think that we will become prosperous. But probably Japanese thought the other way. If you can enhance the value to the customer, you will become prosperous. So here it is, whatever may be the equation, price is on the right hand side of the equation or the left hand side of the equation. The most important aspect is what is the perceived value of the customer. Since morning we have been deliberating. What is the perceived value of the customer is more important, what is your cost is. So the Southwest example people spoke about, and everything is ultimately, it may cost me a penny, but the customer perceives there is a huge value for him. So that's where we need to focus on.
Very true. Thank you. I know we have a professor from IIT who's been wanting to share his opinion. Sir, please, if there's something that we can hear from you.
Yeah, I've been hearing some very interesting discussions. And I think one of the problems is you're talking about the boardroom strategy, and at the other level, you're talking of operations. When we were teaching manufacturing or production management, there was no problem. Now when we fancifully call it operations management, people invariably think that operations management is only at the operational level. Okay? So my problem is that on one side you're talking about the boardroom, and on the other side, this concept of operations, because it's not just tangible products but goods and services also, for which we have brought in this concept of operations. I was impressed by his mathematical modeling, and I thought that I remember Bama Laurie, Bani Banerjee talking that mathematics and all the symbols should be at the boardroom and not at the workplace level. Here I find a diametrically opposite thing, that even our friend says that the board people don't have that much time to listen to you, and you just give one small flyer of a few points. But how you have arrived at that is a real wonder for me. And the other thing is about problems. I think you solve problems to create many more newer problems in the process. And often it is a solution in search of a problem. And I think we'll never ever have that perfection that we're talking about. We're talking about Six Sigma and others. I wonder in the practical world whether even 2 Sigma or even 3 Sigma is being operationalized. As a philosophy, fine. JIT, just in time, fine. But just in time in context of Japan, maybe a few minutes, here is a few months or sometimes a few years. So I think some of these things that are there, you nicely gave the evolution from quality to inspection, etc. And what next? That's what I was wondering, although you talked about design excellence. And you mentioned about excellence, product of 2 or 3 terms. And if they are all point something, when you keep multiplying them, I wonder what is the total excellence composite score that you're going to get. Something like reliability. So I think the way we are combining things about excellence, whether operational or supply chain or design, we should be careful about the units that we are trying to take together to come out with that composite measure. Thank you for this. I have some other things which I had mentioned to him otherwise. Good location modeling, gravity location models. Since my PhD was in that area, we assume that it is squared Euclidean and not the Euclidean or the rectilinear or the LP mode which is there. Models are good, but I think the assumptions and the limitations that you have should also be stated along with the results that you get. We can't quantify everything. I think what we need is objective subjectivity in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your opinion. And I think we all need to go to him sometime so that we can pick his brains and understand more about what we are not able to do in our improvements. Great. You have some question there?
I just want to share one thought on this entire discussion that we had right now. I'm D.K. Mehta from Roop Polymers, heading the operation.
Could you please speak a bit louder?
Hello.
Yeah.
Some, like we mentioned, that these issues should be taken into boardroom or not. The gist which I could find from these discussions that involvement of these issues at board level definitely ensures that this sustainability of the issues are there. Means so the kind of environment we work in the operation level and all that, the sustainability doesn't come if the board level is not involved.
Sure.
So there is a fear, there is a pressure, there is something. So board level is the only one way to sustain the things.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's been sounded by everyone here, sitting here, the importance of these discussions happening at the board level, these initiatives being talked about at the board level, for sure. Thank you. Any other opinion, any other question? We have another couple of minutes, so I can take one more question if you have.
I have something to say.
Sure, Mr. Joseph.
It is in connection with what is being discussed just now, the alignment of the leadership group and the people. Why should people not be thinking in the same manner in which the leadership group thinks? Presume that the leadership group is aligned. Now, this combination of C.K. Prahalad and Gary Hamel is lethal. They once told that it depends upon, the continuous improvement entirely depends upon your ability to create an organizational discomfort. A discomfort with the status quo. Whether you have thousands and thousands of employees who have a discomfort with the way the things are being done and they are ever desirous to do things better so that he becomes a 24/7 employee and he is thinking about doing his things. Operational labor may be cost, quality, speed, productivity, those things better even when he is going home or eating his dinner at his home, 24/7 employee by thinking about improvements, and then you are able to harness the innovative potential of all your employees, something like a leaking roof, all the water being collected into a powerful spout of water for some use.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Just to summarize what last point we discussed, I think there is no disconnect between the people who want to drive excellence, like all of us sitting here, I think, unless otherwise you are mad, you don't choose to become a change agent. So obviously in all conferences there is one subject we commonly discuss is that the CEO buy-in is not there. We need to bring in the CEOs to the conference and so on. My personal view is there is no disconnect between what the CEO wants to do and rest of the people who wants to drive excellence want to do. But the language in which we are talking with the CEO is the problem. So he talks in the language of business result and we talk in the language of tools. So as long as we resolve this, I think there will always be a communication gap between us.
Sure. I think that's very relevant. With this, we will try to bring the session to a close. And thank you for all the patient hearing that you did, and some fantastic questions that came from the audience. And thanks to the panelists for sharing such enlightened views. I think this is a real insight into what the CEOs think about Lean and Six Sigma or such initiatives. And if we are to drive them at a strategic level, obviously what they are asking is that they have to be communicated not in the language of tools but in the language of business. They should be clearly impacting their strategic objectives, and the level of these initiatives and programs need to rise to a strategic level. So I think with that we will end the session. Thanks for all your support. Thank you.